Thank you all for coming today. This panel forum is coming from the Pismo Coast Association of Realtors at the office in Arroyo Grande, and it's November 28th at 2 p.m. I am honored to help host this panel today. I am Pamela Storton, longtime broker and active in organized real estate since 1987. I'm a member of the National Association of Realtors and numerous local associations and realtor associations throughout my career. I have been a commissioner of housing and redevelopment for a Bay Area city, and also have worked in redevelopment in and around the city of San Francisco. I'm grateful to be of service today to our organization, and thank you for letting me be a part of this important discussion. There are numerous fellow concerned realtors and affiliates, members in San Luis Obispo County that are here via Zoom and in person. The history. Many realtor residents and community members have decided to protest the City of Grover Beach rate increases and the economic impact of ballooning costs of the Central Coast Blue Project, CCB. This project will have the greatest impact on the residents of Grover Beach in a physical sense, economically and environmentally. About 55% of Grover Beach's households are tenants, with many economically disadvantaged residents. We have banded together at a grassroots level to inform the ratepayers and property owners of their rights and all of the impacts to Grover Beach. The right. This is not simply a protest or differing viewpoint of a few agents. It is an actual Proposition 218 vote initiated as required by the City of Grover Beach. As such, we felt it is important that our members be offered the opportunity to hear alternatives to the Central Coast Blue Project from a local expert. We want our members to hear the potential impacts to the clients if it passes and to their businesses. We want the concerns about the project itself to be discussed among colleagues and be given the opportunity to ask questions of local experts. Today, we have organized a panel to help you know what it is you and your clients need to understand the project's impacts on Grover Beach and the voting processes so you can better educate and inform your clients. Proposition 218 gives the opportunity for property owners to vote on property-related rights, was created to stop the end runs around Proposition 13, and the California Association of Realtors has historically backed Prop 13. The call to action is to make contact with your clients, family, and friends. This is a ratepayer protest vote, meaning that a person who pays the city water and sewer bill or the property owner must write to the city if they disapprove of their water bills doubling. The vote, the letter must have your name or have the name of the property owner or the person named on the water bill, and must include an original wet signature and the address or parcel number. This is for Grover Beach water customers and property owners. Oh, if they do nothing, it's an automatic yes. All votes must be mailed or delivered to the city clerk, no copies, faxes, or emails, to arrive no later than December 11th at 6 p.m. The no votes will be finalized and counted at the city council meeting that night. Realtor concerns. We have 3 member brokers on the panel to discuss the history of this project and their perspectives, including landlord and tenant impacts as they relate to the Tenant Protection Act, material fact disclosures, and property rights. Some directly related to the significant increases in water and sewer rates. The physical location of the CCB sewer plant in South Grover, and the continued disruption and destruction of city streets for infrastructure digs and pipelines and large moving trucks. Please allow me to introduce each panelist. First, we have Debbie Peterson, broker, realtor for 25 years. She's a former Grover Beach mayor, council member and planning commissioner, a board member of the South San Luis County Sanitation District, and the Slow Water Regional Advisory Board. She authored The Happiest Corruption, City Council 101, Local Impact, You Can Make a Difference, and The Leadership Secrets of Taylor Swift. Stu Jenkins is a native of San Luis Obispo County and has practiced law in our county for 45 years, handling successful election law, civil and property rights court cases. Stu is the host of Slow County Public Policy and the Law show on Saturdays and Sundays at FM 98.5 KVEC. Paul Bischoff is a local real estate broker, obtained his license in 2003. Paul has built 86 homes in Grover Beach since 2001. Paul holds a Bachelor of Science in Civil Engineering from the University of California, Berkeley. Go Bears. Paul and his wife, Jenny, have been married for 30 years and have 3 children. Paul Masters is a local real estate agent and business partner with his wife, Sherry. Paul has been active in organized real estate for 42 years. Their company is Home Masters Realty. Paul is a graduate of San Diego State University and has been a financial planner. Paul and Sherry have been active in the industry and acquiring investment property since 1981 when Paul purchased his first rental at 19 years old. The Masters own and manage several single-family homes and multifamily units in Grover Beach. They work very closely with tenants and understand the impacts of the Tenant Protection Act laws and the real impacts on owners, tenants, and agents selling investment properties. Paul has a heart for keeping his Grover Beach properties relatively competitively priced. And finally, we have Troy Ellison. He is CEO of Coacina, based in Arroyo Grande with national distribution. Troy grew up in AG within a multi-generational family of local experts in wastewater systems and treatment specialists. They have provided excellent leadership to South San Luis Obispo County Sanitation District until the year 2000. We'll begin with Debbie. Take it away.
Well, thank you, all of you, for your interest in Grover Beach. And I've followed 5 cities' water issues since I started as a planning commissioner back in 2004. And while I was there, I championed pervious hardscapes, and Paul can talk to you about that. And also convinced the city to permit gray water and to create a drought-resistant garden at Ramona Garden Park. As mayor, I held a water workshop to explain the history and the geology of our watershed. And as a result, at that time, Grover had the lowest water use in the county at 15 gallons per person per day. And putting that in perspective, by 2020, Grover was logging 86 gallons a day per person, Arroyo Grande 183, and Pismo 237. All 3 now have reduced groundwater use because in 2009, there were chemicals in a test well that indicated possible seawater intrusion. Our groundwater comes from the most northerly sub-basin of the Santa Maria Basin, which goes all the way down to Santa Maria. And it's the aquifer ours supplies Pismo, Arroyo Grande, and Grover. Pismo is bumping up against the limit of their water allocation from Lopez and of groundwater. So they put together a really nice new sewer plant and came up with the idea of cleaning up sewer water at that new plant and then pumping it back into the ground to recharge the aquifer so we could pull more out. They asked Arroyo Grande, Grover, and Oceano to join them. And given the droughts at the time, of course, everyone was very eager to recharge the basin and to generate additional water. Central Coast Blue at 25 million then, when interest rates were 1% and they're now 6%, was costly, but it was less than the other options at the time, or than most other options. By 2022, however, the cost had almost quadrupled to 93 million. Oceano had pulled out, and Pismo had determined that they could recoup 55% of their cost with development fees that would be as high as 29,000, and then the other 45% would come in grants, and that would be based on the percentage of the poverty level of residents in Grover and Oceano. Pismo and Grover split the difference after Arroyo Grande reduced their amount to 25% share. In June 23, the sewer plant relocated from Pismo to South Grover. The pipelines had been on the tracks, but in June in Grover, they found out that the 18 wells and all those pipelines were going to go off the tracks into the residential streets of South Grover. And those are streets with many of them newly fixed that would be torn up again. And to put that in perspective, Grover Beach residents pay 9.5% more on their property taxes. It's 13% a month. Whereas the other 5 cities pay about 3% a month. They do that so that they can repair their streets. And their streets have been repaired twice as fast as they anticipated. So that cost for that bond has hit them faster. And that really eats into their disposable income. And for the businesses who pay even more, it's eating into their profits. But the straw that broke the camel's back was not so much the sewer plant in South Grover or the pipelines in the new streets, but it was the fact that water rates would double in order to pay Grover's share of Central Coast Blue. That information came out just 2 months ago in September. And I was never a fan, but at 25 million, I could live with it. When it wasn't going to increase our water rates, when we were told a year ago that, oh, no, we could participate, it was fine. They'd increased the water rates in 2021 and that was going to cover it. I figured we were good. But then 2 months ago, when I saw that my water rates are going to double, I said, well, I'm not going to be able to run my vacation rentals anymore because I can't put my prices up enough to cover all the other increases. And if that happens to me, I think that's probably happening to the other businesses and people in Grover Beach. So we started thinking about that, and new technologies have arisen. Some of the options that were previously overlooked now are more affordable, especially in comparison to the huge costs that we have for Central Coast Blue. And the city can't double our water and sewer rates unless they first hold what Pam referenced as a Prop 218 hearing. So Grover Beach citizens, literally by thousands, are writing to the city saying no to doubling the water rates because they want to make sure that the council revisits the cost and finds fiscally sustainable emergency water options.
Stu?
Good afternoon. I just wanted to correct a couple things. I'm not a native of the county.
Oh,
I came when I was starting the 4th grade.
okay. Close enough.
That was my mistake.
Yeah, that's all right. And SLO County Public Policy and the Law is on FM 98.5, but it's K-News.
K-News, sorry. Okay,
I sponsored
correction.
somebody on KBC too. Now, I've been asked to talk to you a little bit about Proposition 218 and this process that's going on. And I think the simplest way to think of is that this was a statewide initiative because voters got savvy to the fact that local governments try to reinvent the meaning of words quite frequently. And having sued cities, I've found that there's a lot of manipulation. I was surprised. I thought there was more manipulation than in the family law cases I had. Now, the way these words got reinvented is since Prop 13 and a whole slew of other propositions limited taxation without a 2/3 vote of the electorate. Cities would start to say, well, this isn't a tax, it's a fee. And so they could get around the bar to raising taxes without a vote of the public. With regard to 218, it actually put in 2 parts to the state constitution, Article 13C and Article 13D. And D is, I think, the one that is most applicable here. But what that did was it meant that if there was a fee for something provided by a city related to a property, or by a county related to a property, or a district related to property ownership, then the property owners had a veto if they objected. So it's kind of a vote, but it's a whole bunch of people putting in their objection. And if 50% plus 1 object, that vetoes the fee increase. Now, the other thing I think to think about is what is property and what is property ownership? Anybody here do commercial real estate? A few of you. Well, you know, a lease is a property ownership. It's an ownership for a temporary time, but that's also applies to a residential renter. Even if they've just got a 30-day rental agreement that rolls over, that is a property interest. And so if they are receiving water and paying the water bill, they have a property interest in the water provided to them, the sewer sewage being taken away. Those are related to their property interest in that apartment or in that home. And if you think about somebody who leases a building for business purposes, same thing applies. I've only got 30 seconds.
Yeah, you can have some of my time.
No, that's all right. Anyway, so that's what this process is about. And it's to prevent cities from manipulating the fee to become a tax if the folks who are paying that fee and it's related to ownership of property will object. So I guess the other thing is, you know, I'm the grandson of a Chicago alderman. You know, if you have a commercial property and you have 15 units in the commercial property, or you have residential property with 15 units, same thing applies. And you're paying the water bill for each unit. How many votes have you got? 15.
You do?
Yeah, you got 15 for each of those units, as long as you identify the property and of course, I recommend that you send in 15 separate sheets. Theoretically, you ought to be able to put it on one sheet, but again, you want to avoid the manipulation of meaning of what you've just done. So vote early, vote often. In that situation, that's one of the places where that works. It's actually legal because it's not per voter vote, it's a per property served vote and per water service vote, sewer service vote. I have one client who contacted me and they pay for the landscaping on a particular property. All their tenants pay for everything else, but they're going to be getting their objection. So I'm supposed to stop, and I'm going to.
Stu, thank you for that clarification. That's very helpful. I think we have to get that word out also. We haven't been real clear on that, so we'll work on that. Our next, we are going to Paul Bischoff.
Hi, Paul Bischoff. I'm a home builder primarily and a real estate broker secondarily, and more talking about, I feel like one of my skills is kind of breaking down what we're really talking about and putting it in terms that we can understand for clarity. That there's a political commentator named Dennis Prager, and one of his common lines is that he prefers clarity over agreement. And I really like that idea that if we talk about, we know what we're talking about and we can still agree to disagree, but then at least we're clear on what we're talking about instead of kind of being muddled. And I think that it feels like there's a lot of muddledness in this. So to start, I read the New Times article a couple of days ago, and local former insurance broker Stacey Korsgaden had a quote in there that she was really excited about the project early on, and I echo those sentiments. My degree is in civil engineering, and a solution that uses engineering techniques and science is really awesome, and it's a great solution. But then just this anecdote about clarity and understanding. My in-laws moved. We built a house for us, and it's got an ADU in rural Rio Grande, and we moved my in-laws 4 years ago from Bakersfield, and they had a house that was paid for in Bakersfield that they paid $90,000 for 25 years before. And so they were talking about keeping the house, and so they would have a place to stay when they went back to Bakersfield. And it occurred to me that having $400,000 of asset sitting in Bakersfield. I asked them how many nights they thought they'd stay there, and they said, yeah, maybe 10 or 12 a year. That didn't make any sense, right? And I told them they need to sell that and have that money in their account, and then the wonders of Airbnb can take care of those 10 or 12 or 15 nights per year. And that was obviously the correct solution at the time. Sadly, it was a year before another big increase, and so they lost a fair amount of inflation, but it was the correct decision at the time. I say that because in an economic sense, prices are indicators. Prices get to tell us what the value of somebody who owns something values it at, and then what the potential buyer values it, and the decisions can be made. That's why prices are changing all the time. That's why Soviet Russia collapsed, because these central planners trying to guess at what the prices should be couldn't do it. It's the invisible hand of economic activity that does that, and so elegantly. Government spending doesn't allow those choices, though. It's locked in, and we say yes or no, and then the costs end up kind of being what they're going to be. And it's unfortunate also that government spending a lot of times goes over what the initial estimates were, as we've seen sadly in our adult lives. So that's one aspect of it, that we don't get a real good grasp of what the thing costs. And then on the other hand, the inflation that we're all experiencing, speaking from a social standpoint, inflation is just this disgusting regressive tax on the working poor. It affects them way more than it does the rich. And it affects the things that they buy every day, and the lack of ability to work around that is, yeah, I mean, it's heartbreaking when we realize what, I'll leave the libertarian economic commentary for another time. But the fact that we are experiencing such strong inflationary pressures, and these guys are getting pressures from their fuel, from their food, the rent is going, the rent's going crazy, healthcare. And then so to add this one more increase, like it feels to me that it's not proper to do this to people who are getting hammered in other areas as well. And it amounts to be $1,000 a year extra for every water account. It's gonna be $1,000 per year extra. And so that's a significant amount of money for a lot of people. So thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Paul?
Yeah, hi, thanks, Paul. I like Paul's inflation definition. That's fascinating. There's disgusting tax on the poor. I'd like to bring up a couple of things. I'm Paul Masters, Home Masters Realty, and been doing this with my wife about 20 years. And before that, we were working in franchises, and just seems like it was a good thing to be doing. And we've been all experiencing great change in regard to our existence and government, and this thing's coming at us like a fire hose, where the average person, myself included, I mean, if it wasn't for Pam, I don't think I'd be here. We're just too caught up doing so many things, and then city municipalities come up with the brainstorm and rocket science initiatives like, hey, let's do this vote, and anybody that doesn't answer, that's an automatic yes vote. Hey, that's a good idea. It's not a good idea. So I'm here today to not use my 5 minutes without at least looking at my sheet a little bit here, but potential impacts to owners and tenants. I just want to bring up a tenant scenario. These young couples been at this house, we rent to them, and they're paying subpar rent, and they're a great couple, and they struggle. I mean, like so many tenants in the area, it's a service-oriented industry. So just for the mere privilege of living in Grover Beach, we got their work cut out for them. As a matter of fact, this tent, they're paying $2,100 a month rent, and they have a baby, and another baby is now coming, and they have another couple living with them in a 3-bedroom one bath home. And that's not uncommon. So I'm here to advocate not only for the landlords, but also the tenants who are on the struggle bus. So if you're on the investor end of that to price the asset correctly, you'd say, well, why am I holding on to this? And you'd say, well, I'm holding on to it because I make a little bit, don't I? And then when you do the math on a $600,000 home in Grover Beach at $2,100 a month, and by the time you work it out in the wash, you're in about 3.4% on your money. Does that make sense for anybody in here? And the answer is a definite no. I mean, you can take your money to Charles Schwab and go get 5.25%. And you're not gonna listen to, hey, the toilet's backing up, or hey, the neighbor's cat is, doing something in the shrubs, or you're gonna listen to all this stuff, right? So just put your money in Charles Schwab. But is that really a good, effective way to handle Grover Beach and moving forward? I don't think so, because people like myself are gonna be exodusing out of here. I mean, this stuff that's coming across, and I like talking with Troy briefly before this meeting, because there's not been enough investigative study on what they're proposing here. It seems like it would work for a larger metropolis type, 100,000 plus in population, but it's just unorthodoxly going to be taxing the folks, and especially, thank you, Paul. I'm gonna remember that for forever, but disgusting tax on the poor. So I got a heart for the tenants. I look at that young couple who's now taking on another young couple, and they're hardworking people, they're working as waiters and servers and doing hair and doing this and that. And investors need incentive, not disincentive, not, hey, we're gonna double your water bill in 5 years. And then through a mild discussion with G.B. Colbus just before this, it's not a doubling of the landlord's water bill. You look at that sheet, and this is cut through the mustard. It can be tripling or quadrupling or even more. I mean, it goes from a $2.99 for the first allotment to where the landlord's going to be paying $21 at the end of 5 years. I mean, I don't want to throw too many arrows down at the city there, but I think the cat's out of the bag, and we're kind of catching on to what they're doing, and enough is enough, right? That's all I want to say.
Thank you, Paul.
Right.
Mr. Troy.
All right. Well, so I'll approach things from a little bit of a different angle. Like the article that Paul mentioned, I shared somewhat of the same sentiment as Stacy, in that originally I was really excited about the project and where things were headed, but I've become a little bit disheartened at some of the things that I've seen. And this is a really complex problem. And so I think everybody on both sides needs to understand that there's a lot of nuance, and there's way more gray in the middle than there is black and white. And that both groups, all parties, all stakeholders need to come together, and that a triple bottom line needs to be further analyzed, which is an economic, a social, and an environmental impact. And so far, the analysis that I have seen have fallen short. For instance, the one that was presented to Grover Beach conveniently left out of the 6 analysis anything having to do with price. And I don't know who goes and buys a home without considering the price. I think we could imagine what that would look like. Similarly, we have a traffic problem on the Central Coast, yet we're not leapfrogging over what are iterative and incremental steps and adjustments that we can make in the community. And we're not just going right to drones and flying, propelled, aircraft. Instead, we're going to take singular steps that make sense and wouldn't bankrupt us along the way. Ultimately, what's being proposed right now, it could end up being the correct treatment. But I tend to think that there's some steps that we could take in between. We've really skipped over, and some of that is just as a result of the county and city's poor planning and inability to look forward to some of these problems. And then part of that is as a result of, shall we say, zealous groups, both governmental and non-governmental, who are using buzzwords to really, frankly, scare people into making decisions. And we see that a lot with all sorts of macro problems. And I think it's important that we slow the roll on things like this. We do a greater degree of analysis and further the due diligence. I'm seeing and hearing things that are holes in the presentations that I've seen. And there's probably good answers to them, but I haven't seen them. You know, one of the things that's really just being focused in terms of the cost, we see a $93 million or $92 million capital cost, but what are the ops costs? What are the operational costs? That's what's called OpsX. That's something that's really labored over on projects in the wastewater world, and yet I've seen nothing. So it's one thing that we're talking about the water rates as a function of the capital cost, but what are the ongoing costs of that? And one of the things about water and wastewater systems is it has to be the right water treatment, or it has to be the level of treatment for the right water purpose. And I think the scales are a little imbalanced on this particular project. So I think it's important that we take a moment to stop, do some reassessments, confirm that the direction that we're headed is the best choice for us. I tend to believe that there's probably some other choices that we can take that wouldn't be so costly. But again, reaching across both aisles, I think it's important that everybody knows we should be doing things to protect our water infrastructure. There's some obvious choices that we can and should make. It's not a we shouldn't do anything type of a situation. So I just want to temper everybody's expectations from both sides. And that's it.
Thank you, Troy. Questions? Jess?
Okay, so pardon my naivete, and I don't want to oversimplify this, but I want to kind of talk this out loud and then ask my question. So the problem is we need more water, we need to decrease water usage. This is the city's way to fix that. We don't think that's the best solution, right? So what would a no vote do? What would it force the city to, like, what's the process? What comes after that no vote? Let's say it were to succeed.
May I preface that with something? It's not 1,000% sure that we will ever need this. It is likely, and you could even say probable, but if we get enough rainfall, so now we're delving into, today we have enough water. It's gonna meet our needs. We've had droughts in the past that Lopez has been reduced. So that's another stupid anecdote that I was gonna say. But all that to say, it's possible that we get enough rainfall for X number of years and we won't need any of this. So that's I think a important piece to say too, that it's not that we don't absolutely need this. So go ahead.
Well, what it turns out to be, if it goes forward, is a very expensive first use of the most expensive water. When we have affordable water, very affordable water from Lopez, and this is possibly as much as 5 to 10 times more expensive, and very affordable groundwater, which is what especially Grover Beach has always relied on. And so the only way to bring the city back to the table and to bring Central Coast Blue back to the table is for the people of Grover Beach to say, look, we really just can't do this. And so what will happen if 50% plus one of the people say, no, we can't double our water bills. You told us a year ago that we had enough and now we don't. We can't do that. Too many impacts on us. Then it forces Central Coast Blue to take another look, or it forces Grover Beach to take another look. But it does, it throws a wrench in the works, and it forces them to take another look at it and see if there are ways to do this that are socially just as well as environmentally just. And I think there are.
I think that you have to be comfortable with uncertainty to live in a democracy. The one thing about a 218 no vote in this kind of process is that, number one, it brings to the attention of the elected representatives on council that they haven't done a good enough job communicating with their constituents to find out what they want in people. And number two, because this is in the context of a South County where there are at least 4 communities, and one of which already pulled out. It may bring to the attention of Pismo Beach the fact that they're getting some benefits initially with additional water that lets them expand their city. Some of this is about growth. And all these cities make a whole lot of money off their development fees. That, again, a reinvention of a word, fee to be a tax. And so it may be that Pismo Beach will see that Grover Beach can't afford this huge increase, and maybe they'll kick in some money from other sources. They don't have to do it from water rates. They could kick it in from their TOT. They could kick it in from other things that aren't restricted.
Transient occupancy tax.
Yeah. You're all realtors. I figured you knew.
We know, Paul.
And Arroyo Grande might also consider that. And it might be in that situation that there'd be enough further discussion that perhaps Oceana would come back into the project. If it was recognized that the forest communities were bearing the burdens of the project, and while a lot of the advantages were going to the 2 richer communities in this constellation. And of course, there is always the possibility, I don't think you can discount this, that it would kill the project. But you know, there seems to be a lot of impetus to do this kind of a project. And the other thing I would say is, you know, when I read Steinbeck as a young man, I got the impression, because he said so, that for 15-year cycles, 15 years of lots of water, everybody gets rich. 15 years of drought, everybody goes broke. I'm sorry.
And to my understanding, Arroyo Grande and Pismo Beach are not in a position to really acquire the grants on their own. To my understanding, they needed the economics of Grover Beach and Oceano, which have lower economics there and income to be able to acquire them. And to my understanding, they're raising the water rates so they can go and show that they have more money to get these loans for this project. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I have a question for you, Troy.
Okay.
Troy, how do you know the synthetics from this water, like fentanyl, are going to be able to be cleaned out of them and removed from the poop water? My research shows that only natural elements can be removed during the cleaning process.
So I have no qualms about the contaminants that you're talking about being removed.
Okay.
They'll be fully oxidized and mechanically removed through multiple barrier systems. But I think the real problem here is that, to what Paul said, right, about the drought, right, the bank's full in terms of water right now, so nobody's worrying about our spending habits. And I think I don't think we should assess tomorrow in terms of today's bank account. So I really do think that we should be looking towards, you know, to use buzzwords, resiliency in terms of our water infrastructure. But there are logical steps that you can take that aren't a giant leap, which the Central Coast Blue is looking to take. And you know, here's the thing: there are 480 cities and towns in the state of California. Only 9 of those have actually done this. That's less than 2, or right around 2%. Are we the 2% wealthiest communities in the entire state? No, very far from it. So it's very similar. This is sort of analogous to, you have a 16-year-old, they're about ready to drive, and you want to buy the greatest car in the world, so you hand them a Ferrari. Can they drive the Ferrari? Yeah, absolutely, they can drive the Ferrari. Is it the most responsible thing that you can do? No, there's the cost, but then there's also the ongoing operational costs. No 16-year-old can afford that. And I think that's similarly burdening these communities with unnecessary costs. I think that we can take some meaningful incremental steps forward to help it improve the water infrastructure. I think we can look towards groundwater replenishment, agricultural offset as first steps. And that doesn't mean that Central Coast Blue has to die. I think that the immediate shift can and should focus, and I want to make sure that everybody understands the end goal is complete and total reclamation of water at some point, that we are all being herded towards that on the infinite point on the horizon. So we should be looking towards that, especially in my children's generation. But it doesn't mean that you need to go bankrupt today to get there. You can push some of these things, even though there's scary words being used, on the other side, shall you say, or the proponents for it. You don't have to.
I agree.
Thank you, Troy. Thanks, everyone. Another question? Teresa?
So let me wrap it up, get it straight. So really, the whole purpose is preventative. We're looking at prevention, correct? And AG, Pismo, Oceano, Grover, they're all gonna pitch in. Is it a 5-year loan potentially that they're looking at to do the project? Because I was noticing how many years across and is this a 20-year plan, a 5-year?
Well, I think you know the answer to that, but what you're looking at there on that paper is the combination of the sewer bills and the water bills from the city's rate study and what the average use, what it will be over the course of the next 5 years, which basically doubles for the average use. So that's what that is. It's the combined amounts. It has nothing to do with the loan itself. The loan itself, I believe, is amortized over 30 years. When they started looking at it, it was at 1%. It's now at 6%. And so that's going to really bump up those operating costs that were discussed. So it may not be the time to be taking out that size of a
Who
loan.
potentially really benefits, all the people, or is it in one city as a whole? Because Oceano pulled out for their own reasons, so I can't help but to think the feature and benefit of the futuristic of saving water. The end goal is the one city gonna come out on top of the other if not everybody comes together?
Everybody, when we work together on the water, which we've done really well, everybody benefits. And everybody in the whole basin, all the way down through Santa Maria, benefits when we all are responsible with our use of the water.
Was there any particular reason why Napomo was left out with the potential building out there? Because
I don't know, this is a project just between, well, just in the 5 cities as it
just
were.
in the 5 cities as a whole. So why would Grover Beach have to pay for it all? Is Pismo and AG gonna pay anything, or is it just Grover itself? Are they the targeted?
Each of the cities did their own Prop 218 study and raised their rates, and each of the cities has their own resources, their own amounts in their bank accounts to do the project. Grover Beach, I don't know what happened. I don't know why a year ago they said they had enough money to fund it, and now a year later they don't. I don't actually know why that happened.
And my last question really quick would be, is I don't know enough about Central Coast Blue. Are they nonprofit?
They're a government agency.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure. I was just wondering about that. I haven't.
It's a joint powers authority between Grover Beach, Oceano, and oh, sorry, excuse me, Grover Beach, Arroyo Grande.
That's it for my question.
Huh.
I'm gonna kind of bounce around a little bit. Thank you for doing this. I had no idea this was going on until I received something in the mail. It's confusing at best. I think I read some of the comments on Nextdoor, and I haven't really been involved in this thing. And I watched the city council meetings on TV, and you could see that everyone's concerned. As what Troy said earlier, everyone realizes that it's important to do, okay? But this doesn't seem to be the right vehicle. And I think anyone that I've spoken to, they're concerned that it's been jammed down their throat secretively. And so they know something's wrong. The other side is this deal where you don't have to, if you don't do anything, it's a vote yes, which is crazy in itself. But a couple questions come to mind, just listening to what's going on here. So, in 2020, the city of Grover Beach wanted to give away, to people self-help housing, their remaining, 10,000 square foot lot that would be for an additional water tank or two up on the hill behind Bethel Baptist Church. And I was confused by that at the time, and I said, well, why would you give away that? And they go, oh, we got plenty of water, we don't need that. So they were gonna give that 10,000 square foot lot away, and anybody could research it. This is in 2020, they were happy to do it. So, okay, now we have a situation where Lopez is overflowing. I drove by Lopez yesterday in my car with a guy who goes out boating. And when we came by through the wineries and took a ride. And he goes, man, what's all this water on the other side? So, because there's some kind of a reservoir there that stores, and it's up to the top. He never saw that. And so, okay, we were spilling out water from Lopez because we had too much water. We're saying that, oh, but we need this extra water. And this is Grover Beach saying this, yet 3 years ago, Grover said, shit, we don't need any more water, excuse me. Let's give away that 10,000 square foot lot for free. So how does that make any sense? How do you follow this? So I think a lot of people are confused. I've been doing this for a long, long time. Honestly, I'm confused by it. Everybody's making sense. I think it's just been rushed through. I share what everybody else is feeling. If it's jammed through so quick, there's something wrong. The numbers don't make any sense. There, as Troy said, there are other things to do before you get to the drastic move of this, okay, which is a huge number. And we don't even know what the number is. So, I mean, this is phase one. Well, how much is phase two? Well, we don't even know that we're going to have a phase two. That's craziness. If there's a phase one, there's a phase two. So no one knows these numbers. No one knows any of these things. And what really needs to happen is everybody needs to pause, do some research, figure out what are the other alternatives, and take the other steps in between. Again, I'm just echoing what Troy said, because it makes a lot of sense before you jump to this thing, because it's nuts. And again, I go back to the same thing, the simple question. If we didn't need water when we were in a drought and they were going to give away, I mean, once you give away that 10,000 square feet up on a hill next to your water tanks, you cannot expand the water tanks. You know what I mean? So it would be gone. But they, as of this day, to my knowledge, they still own that 10,000 square feet. So you could probably store 2 water tanks up there, which would store a lot of water. So if you have this certain, this record year of rain like we had, instead of spilling the water out, fill up your water.
Absolutely.
Anyway, that's my 2 cents.
Before I come back to you, anyone else? Jeannie, I'll come back to you, Jess, okay?
I'm gonna stand up so I can see you guys. Sorry, I'm Jeannie Polish. So I'm looking at the water rates and I'm hearing you guys saying they're proposing doubling them. But for multifamily, it's more like tripling them. And that really concerns me when I have a 3-plex in Grover, the water bill, if I have a family of 5, my bill's gonna go up a lot higher. So even though in multifamily, you pay the base rate per door. So a 3-plex, you pay 3 times the base rate. They don't adjust the tiers at all. So you get a tier of 10 units at a very low price. And then after that, you pay escalated. So like at the cheap 10 unit price is $2.99 right now, or next year will be. No, it's right now. But it's gonna move to $21. So $3 to $21 is gonna be the difference of price for multifamily, because we're gonna go through that 10 unit and 20 unit pricing structure. And they haven't adjusted that. So in some ways I'd be happy with doubling, but when I look at these figures, it's not gonna be double for me. It's gonna be triple or 4 times. So that's very concerning.
Because you're gonna be penalizing renters who have families, they'll have the highest water bill. So your families that rent in multi-unit facilities are gonna have the highest water bills.
Jeannie, can I just back up? I wanted
Yeah.
to follow up on this because as real estate agents, you know, we have material facts and we have due diligence and we have disclosures. And I've sold numerous multifamily properties in the area that have recently closed. You know, this did not come to light that those cap rates for those investors are now changing or will change. And we have the Tenant Protection Act, which says you can only raise your rent a certain amount per year, 5 + 3 for CPI up to 10, right? 8 is probably about where it is. If you're an owner on a multifamily unit that has 1 meter and you've included that in your rent, you are not able to make that up later because of your you've already got your markup for CPI +5. I see owners taking the water out of their leases as they come due and billing those tenants on top of it as a prorated amount. Because you can't incorporate that into your lease.
Yeah.
And we as agents have the cap rates for investors are thrown off by these increases right now, starting January 1, if this passes. So realtors really need to understand when they're selling in Grover, that these are discussions they have to have with their owners and their investors. So I just wanted to follow up on you being a
Yeah.
multifamily
The
owner.
thing that, and San Luis structures it different than Grover, but anyways, Grover is very expensive for their water, so.
Can I just jump in on that? That is really what scared me to death at first, was because I have a mixed use building. I have 1 water meter, but I'm charged both commercial rate and the basic rate on the basic overheads. So I pay double even though I have 1 water meter. And that scared me. I thought, well, I can't keep doing this. It's not gonna work. And for commercial units, they pay a lot more.
Right.
The doubling is just for Joe
the
Blow, your
same.
average
Yeah.
homeowner, residential owner. And the other thing that you touched on, Pam, is that we will have to do disclosures on the fact that there's going to be 2 years of construction. There's going to be, in some cases, if there's a well, you will be relocated, or you may wish to be relocated because it's 24/7 for a couple of weeks while they do the drilling, and it's very noisy and there's a lot of bright lights. And somebody told me in Oceano they had 30-foot walls around this drilling, so it becomes really quite invasive for a couple of weeks during those 18 wells being drilled, and some of them are being drilled in residential neighborhoods or near residential neighborhoods and businesses.
And your local disclosures will change too. That we all use, so those will have to be updated.
Can we get
Anybody
back
else?
with Stu's comment to regard to say those triplex on Seabright A, B, and C? You're saying that these votes should go in with that address A, that address B, and then that address B on 3 separate sheets?
That is the most prudent thing to do. Now, the truth is, if there's only 1 meter structure, it may be that the city will take the position that that's only 1 vote and they'll discount the other 2. The fact that the tenant has their rent, including the water bill, may give them a basis for sending a separate protest. A lot of, it's funny, you look at the cases on this going back to when 218 was adopted, and there's lots of different outcomes and different decisions about what will be voted, what votes will be counted. Number one, you have to make sure you get a receipt. There's one case where they were shy 2 votes and 2 people made declarations saying they put in their protest, but they hadn't been counted, and it didn't make it. It went to the Court of Appeal. They did not stop it. So there's a city that wants to make sure that they're not challenged is going to allow observers in the count. And you should perhaps have some good responsible people who are even-handed and of good prudent judgment to volunteer to be observers to make sure the count is properly done. The fact is you have a right to get copies of all the ballots and copies of the names of who all voted and put in their protest. So that you can decide if they should have been counted. You gotta have a right to get the lists of who got counted and who didn't. But there are very short time limits on this kind of thing. And mainly what you want to do is ensure the integrity of the count. Make sure that the decision by the residents of Grover Beach are honored, whatever that happens to be.
So Stu, are you saying that that needs to happen? What we've been told by the city is none of that information will be available until after the count.
True.
And they've told us that, no, we may not have observers. They will count whatever votes they have prior to the 218 hearing.
Well, there's a couple of cases on that, and you may not have a right to have observers, but that will definitely undermine the presumption that the count was done properly.
Okay.
And so then it's a matter of making sure that we have enough people who have a receipt for their protest. And that you collect all of those, and if you feel that you have enough of those, that's all evidence. And that can overcome the presumptions that the city might otherwise have.
So what is the call to action?
We just have a couple more minutes, so I want to grab two other questions. So Jess wanted to,
Yeah.
okay, real quick.
Yeah,
real
yeah,
quick.
yeah, I
5
just wanna
minutes.
get a little bit more of a well-rounded perspective, so first, Stu, you had mentioned that, I think you mentioned, it equates to $1,000 per year increase, is that at the, oh, Paul, okay.
Here's the numbers.
It was somewhere over there, is that at the end of the 5 years, or?
It was right, at the end of the 5 years, yeah, the presumption was the average bill is $170 every other month.
Okay,
So it's just the increase is another 170, so 170 times 6
so,
is about $1,000.
got it, I just wanted to clarify that, and then, assuming that water and sewer rates go up with inflation, when was the last time that rates were increased? Or do you know?
2021.
Do you know how much it was increased?
Actually, they put rates down for the average user, but they put rates up significantly for people who were using larger amounts. And that's how they balanced it. And they said that would be enough to cover Central Coast Blue. So that was a 218 study that they did in 2021 for the purpose of funding Central Coast Blue.
And then I know that Pismo and AG did their separate Prop 18 study and then increased their rates as a result. Do we know what that increase?
Pismo Beach did theirs on October 13th, 2023. And theirs will increase on the whole only about $50 because they were already paying a fairly high amount. Arroyo Grande is paying more than we are in Grover, and theirs was in the spring of 22.
So we have to move on. The panelists are,
And both of those are already done, and the 218 protest time has passed, and
Yes.
those are ratified.
They're
if
done
that's the
and
right word.
dusted, so we are the remaining.
the final protest drop dead date is already December 11th at 6 PM at Grover Beach City Hall at South 8th Street. And thank you everyone for coming. Happy holiday season.